The warning alarm echoed across the small maintenance bay as Dae-hyun leaned over the control panel. The space station was quiet that night, orbiting a nameless rock near the edge of the galaxy. Most of the crew were asleep, and only the softening machines kept him company. Then, through the static of the comms, came a distress signal, weak, broken, and fading fast. He frowned and tuned it again. It wasn't a human code. The signal carried strange harmonic tones, something alien. For a moment, he thought of ignoring it. The command center always said to stay clear of unknown transmissions. But when the signal repeated, there was a voice, faint, scared, like a child crying for help. Within minutes, Dae-hyun was in the hangar, climbing into a small shuttle. The engines coughed to life, and he pushed the thrusters forward. The stars blurred as he left the safety of the station and entered the black silence of space. The coordinates led him to a wrecked shuttle drifting near the asteroid belt, its hull scorched and torn apart. No lights, no movement, only the blinking distress beacon. He docked and forced the emergency hatch open. Inside, smoke hung thick and sparks danced from shattered consoles. He stepped over fallen panels, calling out, "Is anyone here?" No answer. Then, from the back compartment, came a soft whimper. Dae-hyun followed the sound and found a small alien boy curled under a seat, trembling. His skin shimmered faintly blue under the emergency lights, his eyes wide and frightened. The child looked no older than 8. When Dae-hyun knelt, the boy flinched, clutching a small pendant in his hand. "It's okay," Dae-hyun said gently, lowering his voice. "I won't hurt you." The boy blinked. His words broke into the translator. My daddy never came back." Those words hit him like a cold blade. Dae-hyun had seen death, lost friends in accidents and wars. But the small, trembling voice of a child alone in space felt heavier than all of it. He checked the pulse, weak but steady. Carefully, he lifted the boy into his arms. The shuttle groaned as he carried him back. "Hang on, kid," he muttered. "You're safe now." When they returned to the station, Dae-hyun called command. The reply came hours later, short and uncaring. The alien boy was considered non-human cargo. They'd send a team to collect him, but it might take weeks. He was told not to interfere. Dae-hyun stared at the message long after it ended. The boy was asleep in his blanket, breathing shallowly. The station's heating system barely worked in the outer ring, and the air was cold. He sighed and pulled his own jacket over the child. He told himself he wouldn't get involved. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier, not a savior. His job was to fix engines, not lives. But when morning came, he found the boy sitting up, eyes wide, holding the pendant close to his chest. The translator on the boy's wrist beeped softly as he tried to speak. "My daddy," he said, "come home." But home is gone. Dae-hyun didn't know what to say. He set a bowl of rehydrated soup in front of him and sat nearby. The boy hesitated, then ate slowly. Every few seconds, his gaze flicked toward Dae-hyun, as if afraid he would disappear too. After a while, Dae-hyun smiled faintly. "You got a name, kid?" "Rian," the boy whispered. "My name is Rian." "All right, Rian," Dae-hyun said, tightening a bolt on a nearby engine part. "You can stay here until someone comes for you." But he already knew no one would. That night, as the stars drifted silently beyond the windows, Dae-hyun sat beside the boy's cot. Rian slept fitfully, mumbling in his own language, clutching the pendant tightly. The pendant glowed faintly, a strange blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Dae-hyun leaned closer, noticing intricate alien markings carved into it. He didn't recognize the symbols, but they seemed important. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You've got secrets, huh, little guy?" he murmured. Outside, the wrecked alien shuttle floated quietly, half hidden among the rocks. A faint signal still blinked from its console, encrypted, old, and faintly human in rhythm. But Dae-hyun didn't see it. He just sat in silence, the hum of the station, and the boy's slow breathing filling the cold, empty space. He didn't know who the boy's father was, or what danger might follow that broken ship. He only knew that he couldn't abandon him. Somewhere deep down, under the weight of loneliness and years of fixing things that no one noticed, Dae-hyun realized something strange. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. As he turned off the lights, he whispered softly, "Sleep, Rian. I'll keep watch." The stars outside flickered, and far across the galaxy, something stirred in the darkness. A faint echo of man's last message, searching for the boy now sleeping safely under mechanic's care. The first few nights passed quietly. The alien boy, Rian, hardly spoke, and Dae-hyun didn't push him. The space station was cold, filled with the metallic hum of old machines and the faint smell of oil and dust. Dae-hyun spent his days fixing broken generators and replacing parts that were older than he was. But every night, he would stop by the storage room that had become Rian's little home. The boy would sit on the floor, legs crossed, staring at the stars through a small round window. He rarely moved, holding his glowing pendant tight. Dae-hyun started leaving small things beside him. A bowl of soup, a blanket, a few tools to play with. At first, Rian didn't touch them. Then one night, when Dae-hyun came back late, the bowl was empty and the tools were neatly lined up beside the cot. The next evening, Dae-hyun sat beside him. "You like machines?" he asked, turning a wrench in his hand. Rian blinked, then pointed at the wrench. "Fix." Dae-hyun nodded. "Yeah, fix things. That's what I do." Rian smiled the first time, a small, shy smile that made Dae-hyun's chest ache a little. The boy repeated softly, "Fix." Over time, they began to talk in simple words. Dae-hyun would show him how to repair broken lights and open small panels. Rian watched closely, his thin blue fingers surprisingly steady. He learned fast, copying Dae-hyun's every move. When Dae-hyun teased, "You'll be better than me soon," the boy just tilted his head and said, "No, you are teacher." One night, while repairing the oxygen filters, Dae-hyun found Rian sitting in the corner with a handful of wires. The boy was trying to make something, a small circle of metal with blinking lights. "What are you doing there, kid?" Dae-hyun asked. Rian looked up. "Signal," he said softly. "My daddy come back." Dae-hyun froze. The boy thought his father was still alive. Maybe he was, maybe not. The galaxy was big, and wars had taken more lives than anyone could count. But he couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. He crouched beside him and adjusted the wires. "Maybe this'll help him find you faster," he said quietly. Rian nodded, eyes bright again. "Thank you." Days became weeks. Dae-hyun started to care in ways he hadn't expected. He found himself checking on Rian before sleeping, making sure the boy had eaten, even sharing his ration bars when supplies ran low. He told stories from Earth about rain, trees, and oceans. Rian listened with wide eyes, asking questions about everything. "What is rain?" he'd ask. "It's like the stars," Dae-hyun said once, "but they fall from the sky to make the world alive." When Rian laughed, the sound echoed to the metal corridors, bright and clear. It made the old station feel warmer somehow. But not everything was peaceful. Dae-hyun began to notice strange things, silent pings on his radar, small shifts in the communication logs, faint signals that weren't supposed to be there. Someone was scanning the area. Someone was looking for the wrecked alien shuttle. He didn't tell Rian. The boy still worked on his little signal device, whispering softly to himself in his own language. Dae-hyun just watched and waited, his hand always near the emergency beacon. One night, as they ate together, Rian asked, "Why you stay?" Dae-hyun paused. "Because you're here." The boy tilted his head. "But humans, they don't like my kind?" Dae-hyun sighed. "Some don't. Some are afraid of what they don't know." Rian looked down at his glowing pendant. "You're not afraid." He smiled faintly. "I've seen scarier things than a small alien boy with too many questions." The boy giggled, covered his mouth. For a moment, everything felt normal, like they weren't alone in the middle of nowhere. That night, Dae-hyun couldn't sleep. The soft hum of the station comforted him, but something kept tugging at the back of his mind. He walked to the control deck and opened the long-range sensors. A new signal blinked faintly in the distance. Not human, not standard. It was the same type that came from Rian's broken ship. Dae-hyun zoomed in. The signal wasn't random. It was searching, scanning, and worse, it was getting closer. He shut off the display and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. Whoever was looking for that ship might not be coming for a rescue. They might be the reason it crashed. When he went back to the storage room, Rian was still awake, sitting by the window, the stars reflecting in his eyes. Dae-hyun crouched beside him and whispered, "You okay?" Rian nodded sleepily. "Stars look like home." Dae-hyun glanced out too. "Maybe, but you're safe here, okay?" The boy smiled and whispered, "Safe with you." Then he fell asleep, his small hand still clutching Dae-hyun's sleeve. Dae-hyun sat there in silence, staring at the stars beyond the window. The hum of the machine surrounded them, steady and calm. He knew the peace wouldn't last. Someone was coming, and when they did, he'd have to decide just how far a mechanic would go to protect one lost child in the middle of the stars. The next few days felt quiet, but Dae-hyun could sense something changing. The boy, Rian, seemed happier lately. He smiled more, talked more, and followed Dae-hyun everywhere. But deep inside, Dae-hyun felt uneasy. The strange signal he had seen on the radar kept returning, stronger each time. He didn't tell Rian about it. He didn't want to scare him. Instead, he worked longer hours on the station's shields and communication panels. Every time he adjusted the frequency, the sensors picked up whispers, soft electronic sounds that didn't belong to any human transmission. It almost sounded like someone calling out through the dark. One night, while Dae-hyun repaired a broken antenna outside the station, Rian came to the window and waved at him. His small hand pressed against the glass, and Dae-hyun smiled behind his helmet. But when he turned back to his work, his suit comms crackled. "Rian alive?" The words were faint, almost broken. He froze. The voice was alien, the same strange tone he had heard from Rian's old ship. He checked the signal again. It came from deep space, moving closer, too steady to be random. He hurried back inside. The boy was waiting near the airlock. "You okay?" Rian asked softly. Dae-hyun crouched beside him. "Hey, Rian, you remember your father's name?" Rian blinked, surprised. "My father, Captain Reth. He's strong. He say he come back." Dae-hyun's heart sank a little. He realized now the signal might not be a rescue. The message wasn't coming from one ship. It was several. Too many. And if they were calling Rian's name, then they already knew he was alive. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat by the main console, listening to the static hum of the stars. Then suddenly, the message returned, clearer this time. Unit 7 Human Station returned the prince. His breath caught. The prince. He looked toward the sleeping boy in the next room. Rian wasn't just anyone's child. He was royal. That explained the strange pendant, the advanced ship, and why the fleet had been searching for him. But Dae-hyun couldn't understand one thing. If they wanted him back, why had no one come sooner? Why had the boy been left alone for so long? The next morning, Rian noticed something was wrong. "You look sad," he said, tilting his head. Dae-hyun smiled weakly. "Just tired, kid. Big day ahead." They worked together, fixing the heating system. Rian handed him tools, still humming softly in his alien language. Dae-hyun wished the moment could last, but the truth weighed heavy on him. He had to decide soon whether to answer the signal or hide from it. Later that evening, while Rian was asleep, Dae-hyun sent out a short transmission, just a simple message. "Who are you, and what do you want?" The reply came almost instantly. "We are the royal vanguard of the Ilari kingdom. You hold our heir. Surrender him, and you will not be harmed." Dae-hyun stared at the words. His fingers tightened around the console. "He's a child," he whispered. "He's not a thing to surrender." The voice responded again. "You will comply. His mother, the queen, demands it." He cut the channel immediately. His heart pounded. If the queen herself wanted her son back, then maybe it was good news. But the tone of that message didn't sound gentle or loving. It sounded like an order. When Rian woke up later, he found Dae-hyun sitting by the control screen. "You hear something?" he asked quietly. Dae-hyun nodded. "Yeah, from your home." The boy's eyes lit up. "My daddy?" He hesitated. "Maybe they're looking for you." Rian smiled. "Then we go." He looked at him. The small boy who had trusted him, who shared food and laughter, who believed the world was still kind. He wanted to say yes, but something about the message made him feel cold. Not yet, Dae-hyun said softly. We have to be sure it's safe. That night, the station shook. The metal walls groaned, lights flickered, and alarms rang. Something big had entered orbit, something heavy. Dae-hyun grabbed his tools and rushed to the deck. Through the main window, he saw a massive shadow against the stars, a ship unlike anything he'd seen before, sleek and glowing with blue fire. Rian ran to his side, eyes wide. That's Home's ship, he whispered. That's the Queen's flag. Before Dae-hyun could answer, a voice boomed through the speakers. Human mechanic, you have sheltered royal blood. You will stand down and prepare for transfer. Dae-hyun swallowed hard. Rian, get behind me. The boy grabbed his sleeve, trembling. They sound angry. He nodded slowly. Yeah, they do. Outside, the great ship began to open and hangar, sending a bright beam toward the station. It wasn't an attack, not yet, but it was clear they weren't asking anymore. Dae-hyun's mind raced. Maybe they really wanted to take the boy home. Or maybe they didn't want witnesses. He didn't know which truth to believe. Rian looked up at him, voice shaking. You stay, right? Dae-hyun placed a hand on his shoulder. Always. He turned toward the control panel, typing fast, sealing off the lower decks. The beam outside grew brighter, flooding the room with blue light. He took a deep breath. If they want you, he muttered, they'll have to come through me first. In the corner of the room, the broken signal device Rian had built began to blink, steady and strong, as if answering the call from the dark. The stars outside the station looked cold and distant as the royal warship hovered above. Dae-hyun had never felt so small in his life. The giant vessel was like a mountain of metal and light, its engines humming like thunder. Every few seconds, another message came through. Surrender the air. Do not resist. He ignored it. Instead, he focused on keeping Rian calm. The boy sat on the floor beside him, clutching the broken pendant he wore around his neck. They're angry, Rian whispered. Why are they angry? Dae-hyun looked at him and sighed. Maybe they're scared too, he said softly. People do strange things when they're scared. He turned back to the control console. The station's defenses were weak, just old shields and a few drones. Against a royal fleet, they were nothing. But he couldn't just hand Rian over without knowing the truth. Hours passed. The warship didn't fire, but it didn't leave either. It just circled like a predator watching its prey. Dae-hyun tried sending more messages, asking to speak with someone, anyone, who could prove they meant no harm. But every reply was the same: surrender the child. Rian didn't sleep. He sat close to Dae-hyun, eyes wide and full of worry. You can go, he said suddenly. They won't hurt you if you go. Dae-hyun smiled weakly. Not a chance, kid. I made a promise. He stood up, pacing the small control room. The air was cold now. The heating system couldn't keep up after the last hit from the beam. The lights flickered. Everything about the night felt endless. Then the sound came, a heavy thud against the outer hull. Dae-hyun froze. Boarding team, he muttered. He grabbed the old plasma cutter from the wall. Rian jumped to his feet. What do we do? We survive, Dae-hyun said. The alarm started blaring. Metal doors shook as something tried to cut through. Sparks flew. Rian clung to his sleeve, trembling. They're here. He pushed the boy behind a control desk. Stay down and don't move, no matter what. The door finally broke open and light poured into the room. Figures stepped through, tall, armored aliens with bright silver skin and glowing eyes. Dae-hyun raised his cutter, his hand steady even though his heart was pounding. One of them spoke. Human, step aside. We come for the prince. He's not going anywhere with you, Dae-hyun said firmly. The alien's eyes narrowed. You dare defy the royal command? I dare protect a kid, he shot back. The soldiers moved closer. Before they could reach him, a small voice echoed behind Dae-hyun. Stop. Rian stood up, his pendant shining faintly. I am Rian, son of the queen. You will not harm him. The soldiers froze for a moment, then knelt. Daehyun's eyes widened. The pendant was glowing brighter now, reacting to their presence. One soldier raised his head slowly. "My prince, it is true." But before relief could come, the ship's speakers crackled again. A new voice, colder and sharper, filled the air. "Take the human too. The queen wishes to speak with the one who dared to defy her fleet." Daehyun looked down at Rian, who seemed just as confused as he was. "Guess we're both in trouble now," he muttered with a faint grin. The soldiers escorted them through the airlock to a shuttle. The journey to the royal warship felt like a blur, endless corridors, strange glowing symbols, and silent guards watching them. Rian held his hand tightly the whole time. When they arrived on the main deck, the doors opened into a grand hall. At the far end stood the queen, tall, elegant, and covered in silver armor that shimmered like stars. Her eyes were sharp, filled with power and sadness. "Mother," Rian whispered. The queen stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "My son," she said softly, "you're alive." She looked at Daehyun next. "And you, the human who kept him." Daehyun bowed slightly. "I didn't know who he was. I just saw a boy who needed help." The queen's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. "You interfered with royal matters. You kept him from his people." With respect, Daehyun said, "No one came for him. He thought you were gone." The queen's gaze faltered, just slightly. "War kept us away," she said quietly. "We searched for years." Rian stepped forward. "He took care of me, Mother. He fed me. He fixed my ship. He stayed when I was scared." The queen looked between them. Her voice trembled now, though she tried to hide it. "The human risked his life for you?" "Yes," Rian said simply. The hall was silent. The queen turned her eyes to Daehyun again. "You could have traded him for wealth or safety," she said. "Why didn't you?" Daehyun shrugged slightly. "Because he's just a kid, and kids deserve someone to come back for them." The queen stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, she smiled, the kind of smile that carried both pain and gratitude. "You have done what many of my own kind failed to do," she said softly. "You gave my son hope." She raised her hand, signaling the guards to lower their weapons. "The long night is over," she said. Rian turned to Daehyun, his eyes shining. "We go home now." Daehyun looked at the queen, uncertain. "That's up to her." The queen nodded slowly. "He is welcome home," she said. "And you, human, you are welcome too." As the stars shone through the great windows of the ship, Daehyun felt the weight lift from his shoulders. The long night had finally ended, not because of power or war, but because two hearts from different worlds had chosen kindness. The royal ship floated quietly in orbit above a bright blue planet. It was peaceful now. No more alarms, no more threats. For the first time in what felt like forever, Daehyun could rest. But peace felt strange to him. He had spent so long fixing things, saving things, surviving. Now there was only silence and a boy who wouldn't stop following him. Rian ran down the hall with a small laugh, his silver pendant bouncing against his chest. "Daehyun, come see," he called out. The boy's voice echoed through the long metal corridors. Daehyun sighed but smiled as he set down his toolkit. "What is it now?" Rian grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the observation deck. "Look," he said, pointing through the glass. The planet below shimmered with oceans and glowing cities. "Mother says we'll live there soon. A new start." Daehyun stared quietly. It was a beautiful world, full of color and warmth. "It's nice," he said softly. "Better than this cold ship." "She said you can come too," Rian added quickly, as if afraid Daehyun might say no. He raised an eyebrow. "Did she now?" Rian nodded eagerly. "She said you're family now." That word, family, hung in the air. Daehyun didn't know how to feel. He hadn't been called that in years. Not since Earth. Not since before the war that tore everything apart. Later that day, the queen called for him. He entered her chamber with a deep breath. She stood by the window, her armor replaced by a long silver robe that shimmered faintly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something heavy. Gratitude, maybe, You have given my son more than protection, she said. You gave him a reason to live when hope was gone. I didn't do anything special, Dae-hyun replied. Just kept him safe. That is what fathers do, she said gently. The words hit him harder than any blast or weapon ever could. He looked away, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. I'm not his father, he said quietly. Maybe not by blood, the queen said, but bonds are not always written in blood. She turned toward him fully. He speaks of you as his guide, his teacher, and his heart. You will come with us to the surface. He would not go without you. Dae-hyun hesitated. Your people, they don't seem too happy about a human being here. The queen smiled faintly. They will learn. Perhaps you can teach them, too. The ship landed a few days later on the planet's surface. It was nothing like the cold darkness of space. The air was soft and warm, filled with strange singing creatures and the smell of wildflowers. The city shone with towers made of crystal and light. Everywhere Dae-hyun looked, people stared at him, curious, cautious, but not unkind. Rian stayed close to him the entire time. The boy showed him around like a proud tour guide. That's the Hall of Stars. And that's the garden where I used to play. You had a pretty nice place before you crashed into my station. Dae-hyun joked. Rian laughed, his eyes bright. But I like it better now, because you're here. The queen later held a ceremony. The hall was filled with nobles, soldiers, and advisors. Dae-hyun fell out of place in his worn clothes, standing among beings who looked like living statues. But Rian stood beside him proudly, holding his hand. The queen spoke loudly so all could hear. This human risked his life to save my son, she said. He did not seek reward or glory. He simply cared. There was a long pause. Then she looked directly at Dae-hyun. He will stay with us. Not as a servant, not as an outsider, but as a guardian of the royal line. From this day, he is one of us. A wave of murmurs filled the hall, but none dared to object. The queen's word was law. Dae-hyun didn't know what to say. He only nodded slightly and whispered, "Thank you." After the ceremony, Rian ran to him, his smile wide. "Does that mean you're really staying?" Dae-hyun knelt down, so they were eye level. "If you want me to," he said. "I do," Rian said, throwing his arms around him. "You're my dad now." The words made Dae-hyun's throat tighten. He rested a hand on the boy's back. "Then I guess I better start acting like one," he said softly. The days passed peacefully after that. Dae-hyun started working with the royal engineers, helping repair old machines and teaching new methods from Earth. The aliens respected his skill, even if they didn't always understand his humor. Every night, he sat with Rian by the balcony, watching the stars. "Do you miss your home?" Rian asked once. "Sometimes," Dae-hyun admitted, "but I think maybe I found a new one." Rian smiled. "Then I'm glad you stayed." As the twin moons rose over the horizon, their light spilling across the city of crystal, Dae-hyun realized something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the kind born from quiet, but the kind built from connection, from belonging. He looked down at the boy who now called him father, and up at the queen who had trusted him with her world, and he knew. The stars had led him here for a reason. The human mechanic had come as a stranger, but now, among beings of light and silver, he was no longer just a visitor. He was family. The end.